Did Netflix ruin Pokémon? What is going on? Netflix is a great service, Pokémon is a timeless anime, and you'd think that Pokémon fans would be excited that the new Pokémon Horizons anime is finally rolling out in English. I mean, who doesn't want a bigger community, more Poke hype, and more Orla in more languages? But a number of baffling moves have triggered fans and left viewers pawing at their VPNs and other more nefarious options in order to watch the Japanese episodes as they come out. The first issue is that as soon as Netflix USA nabbed the rights to stream Pokémon Horizons' predecessor series Pokémon Journeys a few years ago, the Japanese to English episode gap got stretched wider than Hitmonlee's legs. And I hate to tell you, but Horizons is the straddle split to Journey's mega kick. Because even though Pokémon Horizons the series was announced way back on November 29th, 2022 and premiered in Japan on April 14th, 2023, it wouldn't reach the United States until February 23rd, 2024. That's 451 days out from the series reveal, 315 days since the Japanese debut, 218 days from the sneak peek of the English dub, and even if you were one of the lucky 6% who got the show a little bit earlier, it was a heck of a wait when you considered that nowadays online it is nearly impossible not to stumble into all the juicy details about a show you're interested the day it drops in its native tongue. This is a big problem because although back in 1998 I didn't even have internet at home, so I had no idea that Ashy Boy had already caught Charmander over a year ago in Japan. But in 2024, the anime's hype cycle is tied to the Japanese air dates rather than the English release schedule, meaning that the fandom begins discussing the upcoming Japanese episodes as soon as they're announced, then the episodes air in Japan, the fans and the media react, the hype dies down within a few days, and by the time the English dub stumbles out of bed to get dressed, the party is already over. The funny thing is that the Pokémon company itself knows just how much this sucks in the age of social media and simulcasts. They often act as if viewers outside Japan should be up to date with the Japanese episodes, and I have to admit that they even caught me off guard when the official American account spoiled Ash Ketchum winning the World Coronation series in Pokémon Journeys before I even had a chance to watch the Japanese episode on the Japanese release day. And they did this because they knew they needed to catch the hype train when it actually mattered, not 7 months later when the English episode finally staggered into the room. And now we have a 10.5-month gap between the Japanese and American launch dates of Pokémon Horizons. But the strange thing is that pre-Netflix, the Japanese to English gap was actually getting smaller with every generation. And this begs the question, why is the lag now 5 to 6 times worse than it was 10 years ago? Because not only is the gap between series premiere episodes getting uglier, but during the run of Pokémon Journeys, the gap between regular episodes, roughly measured in mammalian gestation periods, gradually slipped from baboon to hippo to cow to a whopping 336 days between the Japanese and English dubs of episode 118, Battling Hard as Stone. And the gap is often worse for languages that use the English dub as their starting point. Of course, this is still better than the early days when English episodes aired a year or more after the Japanese episodes aired. At first because it was an open question if Pokemon would even succeed overseas, but later and in large because of 4Kids' lengthy breaks between seasons. However, when Pokemon USA took the reins from 4Kids midway through the Ruby and Sapphire saga, the boys really got to work on bringing the show's distribution strategy into the 21st century. Basically, in order to align the beginning of the English Diamond and Pearl anime with the North American release of the Diamond and Pearl video games in April 2007, they compressed season 9 of the anime by airing many of its episodes back to back, and the result was fantastic. Because the year-long gap between the Japanese and English episodes was cut to roughly 6 months in the Diamond and Pearl saga, slashed to 2 to 3 months or less by the time we got to Pokemon X and Y, and in Pokemon Sun and Moon the interval was still looking pretty good. Needless to say, fans loved the direction that the dub was headed in. But then all hell broke loose with the release of Pokemon Journeys. Especially in the USA, where Netflix's acquisition of exclusive rights to stream new episodes would throw the world's largest speaking English population into an era of darkness. In the era of Pokemon Journeys, humans, like so many of Earth's beautiful animals, could literally get to work, conceive, and give birth to children in the gaps between many of the Japanese and English episodes with time to spare. And when it became clear that Netflix would also be distributing Pokemon Horizons, well, we knew we didn't need to rush the family planning. Sure enough, Captain Pikachu Star Spangled Banner Edition is moseying in 315 days after the show's Japanese debut. And although we may never know what specific production issues, financial constraints, licensing discussions, or carefully crafted intentions have contributed to the dub's tardy arrival, many fans blame the Netflix strategy of releasing batches 2 to 3 times a year for contributing to this delay. But longer waiting times between episodes is only one issue with the batch release model, and the other issue is probably even more vexing. It's, as they say, the reason Netflix ruined Pokémon. Obviously, Netflix's binge-friendly model has transformed the entertainment industry, and I understand how the ability to binge an entire 8 to 10 episode series in a day or two is appealing, in the same way that eating 12 McNuggets instead of 1 McNugget can be pretty appealing. Not to mention that it's incredible to have access to the entire backlog of long-running shows like Pokémon that would otherwise be catastrophically expensive to purchase. At least, that's what I love about Amazon Prime, and I'm sure Netflix USA is no different. Oh, never mind. In any event, releasing new shows in big batches is really fun, but also really awful for a number of reasons, from encouraging unhealthy consumption patterns to killing camaraderie between fans. For example, when the Netflix adaptation of One Piece came out in full on August 30th, 2023, it received critical acclaim and broke more records than Machop at a music shop, but by mid-September, nobody cared. However, if the episodes had been released weekly instead of all at once, the series' hype cycle could have lasted not 2 weeks, but 2 months, and viewers could have enjoyed discussing where the series would go next for the better part of autumn rather than the better part of 8 hours. The previous year, we also saw the Netflix model kill the hype around JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean by circumventing the week-to-week fan discussions that made broadcast of earlier seasons sparkle, and it truly sucked. But I think that the Netflix batch release model is especially incompatible with a weekly show like Pokémon, which is designed specifically to keep fans engaged, grow the fanbase, hype the games, and sell the merch on an ongoing basis. Because unlike tight, fast-moving shows like The Witcher, Castlevania, or NetPiece, Pokémon doesn't really fit into neat and tidy batches of 8 to 12 episodes, as each Pokémon series is spread across well over 100 episodes that progress the plot at a Shellmet's pace, and let alone how excruciating it is to be block-fed a slow-moving series in 12-episode bundles every 3 to 5 months. The way Netflix arbitrarily split up the story of Pokémon Journeys was abysmal to say the least. For example, Batch 1 ended halfway through a 2-parter that didn't make for an exciting cliffhanger, it just felt incomplete. Batch 3 ended in the middle of the Ash vs. Bee redemption arc to make it even more disjointed than it was in the Japanese version, and the gap between batches 8 and 9 awkwardly put the brakes on the Masters 8 tournament just as it was heating up. Not to mention that the batch model amplifies the English version's misalignment with promo campaigns specifically designed to market the video games, which, unlike the anime, are launched worldwide on the same day. Of course, now that all of Pokémon Journeys is available on Netflix, it's a great way to watch the show, but my viewers' frustration with the timing and batching of the show's rollout was a common theme in the comments for 3 years, and we can only dread what Pokémon Horizons' release schedule might look like. Because arbitrary batching is goofy, it sucks for kids especially to wait for what must feel like an eternity between batches, and I don't particularly want my kid getting into the unhealthy habit of binging television like a squabbit at a Chinese lunch buffet whenever new batches actually do come out. But worse than the bungled promo timing or all the grumpy kids and adults, you just can't beat the feeling of looking forward to watching and chatting about a show like Pokémon or JoJo's with family, friends, and fans from week to week. And yet Netflix's awkwardly spaced, arbitrarily batched publishing timelines flush that communal experience straight down the toilet. Not to say that there's anything wrong with Netflix itself, it's a powerful, affordable platform that gives viewers a lot of bang for their buck, but it would be much better if Netflix USA simply released Pokémon on a weekly basis, as is the norm in Japan via cable TV, Amazon Prime, YouTube, and other platforms. And it would be ideal if the English language version didn't lag behind Japan so much in the first place, because the batch model is really just the crappy cream on the massive gap galette. And although many English-speaking fans blame Netflix as the company that ruined the Pokémon anime experience, Netflix is only partially to blame, because it's the entire production process behind the original and international versions that creates the majority of the lag to begin with. Basically, the English dub would have to be recorded much earlier in the process to even have a shot at going neck to neck with the Japanese version release dates. But one easier fix would be to simply release a subtitled episode via Netflix or the official YouTube channels on the day that the Japanese episodes air. You know, the kind of thing that one dude on a laptop in Chengdu manages to do in 4 to 5 hours. This compromise would delight many older fans, aka the people who actually buy Pokemon products for themselves or their kids, and at least in theory it would curb some of the rampant piracy. But the bad news is that it's highly improbable that the show would ever go sub before dub, because the Pokemon anime is primarily made with kids in mind, and to state the obvious, most kids can't even read until early grade school, which would make a subtitled show with inaudible dialogue about as intelligible to the target audience as a doctor's prescription spelled out in zoodles. Which brings us to the ultimate solution, launching the English dub episodes on the same day as the Japanese episodes. Of course, a simultaneous dub release would be challenging for a never-ending weekly anime like Pokémon, as the parties involved need to negotiate licensing, book talent, meticulously localize each episode, record, and put everything back together. Not to mention that the dubbing studio creates new music to avoid paying royalties to Japanese creators. That said, in the age of internet hype, piracy, and expectations to reduce wait times, the simuldub is still the ideal approach. Obviously, it would take a daunting revamp of the anime's production pipeline, but fingers crossed that at the very least, Pokémon Horizons is more guinea pig than gorilla.